Instead of being in your child's classroom, your money is sitting in Washington here because the Secretary of Education could not be bothered to meet a deadline. That is the difference between a school having an after-school program or not.
Georgia's Congresswoman Lucy McBath is calling for $7 billion in withheld federal funding for schools. It comes as the Trump administration is set to resume its plan to dismantle the Department of Education. One part of that plan is laying off nearly 1,400 employees. Joining us here on The Take, Representative Lucy McBath, serving Georgia's 6th District in Congress since 2019. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
So why do you think the administration waited until this 11th hour to delay the funding? Do you feel that was a calculated political move or perhaps symptomatic of deeper operational issues?
Well, as we know, it's no secret that this administration wants to defund and dismantle the Department of Education. So I truly believe that they knew that this deadline was coming forth July 1st, and they just determined that they weren't going to allocate the funding. And it's really distressing because this is the job of Congress. We allocate funds to make sure our public schools, our teachers are trained, make sure the public school funding is allocated all across the state. And for them to illegally withhold these funds is just not morally and ethically right. It's just not. You talk about $225 million that's supposed to be allocated to Georgia alone. This hurts not only our students, it is a disservice to our teachers. Those funds are used for training our teachers, before school, after school programs. There's like 5 grant programs now, statewide, but also nationwide, that this money is supposed to be appropriated for. And they knew that this July 1st deadline was something that they were going to should have adhered to, and they didn't. And it was deliberate. I firmly believe it was deliberate because of the overreaching goal to dismantle the Department of Education.
So that deadline passed, and then we got the decision from the Supreme Court. Tuesday, President Trump was asked about that decision ruling concerning the Department of Education. Let's take a listen to what he said.
We had a big win with the Supreme Court on the Department of Education. As you know, we want to bring education back to the states, take the federal government out of it. A little tiny bit of supervision, but very little, almost nothing, like to make sure they speak English. That's about all we need. We have school choice, and we're getting school choice approved all over the country. We just got it done in Texas, and school choice is the answer.
So the president talking about putting it back on the responsibility solely really of the states. He's talking about supervision, but really funding is a question. Can you talk about your reaction and how this impacts classrooms? Parents are watching, they're wondering what happens to special education programs, to schools in underserved communities, kids on individualized learning plans. What would be the real-time day-to-day impacts if this, not just supervision, but funding is pulled from the federal level?
Absolutely. I've spoken to parents that are they're appalled because they enroll their children in these programs that would help with children that have dyslexia, children that have other disabilities. And now those funds are not there. So where do they turn? A youth center in Thomasville, Georgia closed 2 weeks early because the funding that they depended on, that they count on every summer, wasn't available to them. So you're going to continue to see these kinds of problems over and over again in every county. We know within Georgia, the Atlanta public school system, Cobb County, my district, of course, Douglas County, schools are starting by August 4th, and those funds aren't there. And so a lot of the programs that our parents are depending on to help assist and support our children academically, they're not going to be there. And it's a snowball effect. What happens federally, the states are depending on these resources, and those resources aren't there. Each and every state financially allocates different resources for public school education. Not every state across the country has the same level of financing. And that is the reason why the federal government, the Department of Education, has been undergirding and helping to support these public school programs to make sure that every child across the nation is given an equal opportunity for the same kinds of education. And now those resources are not going to be there. And that is egregious. It's hurting not only our children, but it's a disservice to our families. And most definitely, they're abandoning our teachers.
And this has been in place since 1979, of course, with roots in Georgia because President Jimmy Carter established the Department of Education. We saw his image there on the screen a moment ago. Quickly, are you planning additional tactics, maybe hearings, shutdown threats, targeted amendments, to ensure those funds get doled out somehow?
Most assuredly, I sit on the Committee of Jurisdiction, which is the Committee for Education and Workforce, and we are planning right now to make sure that we hold this administration accountable, that we hold the of Education and Secretary McMahon accountable for, really making sure that, our children have the support that they deserve and they need. So we're going forward. This is not the only tactic. 150 of my colleagues signed on to a letter that I put forth last Thursday to the Department of Education and the Trump administration demanding that they release these funds. There are 24 states across the country that have also sued the Trump administration for the withholding of these funds. So we're just starting, we're just beginning. There's more to come.
All right. You mentioned that $225 million specifically to Georgia. You warned that Georgia and other states facing layoffs, program cuts. From conversations that you're having with maybe local superintendents, teachers, parents, what's the specific toll that you're hearing, maybe data that you're seeing on the ground?
Well, I've reached out to appropriate contacts at the Department of Education, the White House. I've talked to teachers, and they're very, very afraid. They know that the programs that they have been involved in, you're talking about resources, just resources that they need to be able to even have in the classroom. They're not going to have those resources. They're very afraid. Of course, we know that our labor unions, they're working on the ground, doing everything that they can. The teachers' unions are working on the ground, making sure that they're putting forth all efforts to demand accountability from this administration.
And like you said, much more to come. I want to turn back before we run out of time to local politics here in Georgia. Midterms approaching quickly. Several candidates have already declared their choice to run. You paused your campaign for governor back in March. Do you have plans to start that campaign back up?
No, I do not. No plans at this point. There is a lot to be done here in Washington. There's a lot to be done here on the Hill. I want to continue to focus and make sure that I'm doing everything to help support and undergird my constituents in the 6th District and all across the state of Georgia. There's so much more to be done, and I want to make sure that I'm working every single day on behalf of Georgians that are really counting on us here in Washington. With all of the budget cuts, people being laid off their jobs, there's so much that people are really worried and concerned about, and they have a right to be. And so I've made the decision to stand firm, stay where I am, and to fight the good fight right here in Washington.
So on that note, when will you announce your plans to run for re-election for the House seat?
I'm already running for re-election for the House seat. We run every 2 years, and so we've already begun that campaign.
All right. What would your takeaway be? Final thought. We see town halls happening around us here in Metro Atlanta. We feel the emotion surrounding politics on both sides. What would you say as a final message to everyone back here in Georgia?
Well, my final message to everyone in Georgia is that, the Georgia families, they need this funding to be in their schools. The Trump administration is harming our students, abandoning our teachers, and everyone who is concerned. You need to contact your Republican representative to demand that these funds be released. That is your charge.
Representative Lucy McBath, we really appreciate your time.
Thank you.